Welcome to Chasing Hardware, the podcast that sits down with the sports figures you grew up with and hears their stories. Welcome to Chasing Hardware. I'm your host, Rich Lamello. My guest today is in both the College and Pro Football Hall of Fame. His years at Florida State were so highly regarded that the award given to the best collegiate receiver each year is named for him. On the iconic Oakland Raiders teams of the 60s and 70s, my guest was the MVP of Super Bowl XI, and he played in 5 of the 30 most famous games in league history. When he retired, he was the 5th leading receiver all time, and nobody had more catches for more yards or more touchdowns in the postseason than he did. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to Chasing Hardware, Mr. Fred Biletnikoff. Fred, welcome.
Rich, thank you. Good to be on with you. Hope you're doing fine.
Yeah, doing great. Let's just jump right in. Okay. So Fred, obviously I gave a little bit of color on your background just to open things up, but you're born and raised in Erie, Pennsylvania. You go to Tech Memorial High, which is now called Erie High School, and you are a football, basketball, baseball, and track guy. Tell me a little bit about growing up in Erie, where I think, if I understood correctly, your older brother was kind of an influence, and you also had a younger brother who you played sports with.
Yeah, I played both with my older brother, Ken, who played at one of our rival schools, East High School, and my brother, Bob, played with me at Tech, even though he was 2 years younger. Yeah, but, it was great being able to have my older brother and watching him and what an impact he made in sports, and then my younger brother, who made an impact on sports in Erie, and being able to play with him for a couple of years. And just going through that process was great. And, being raised in Erie was a great experience for me because of the fact that, we had a lot of great ball players there, a lot of competition. The high schools were, everybody was a rivalry, no matter who you were playing in the high schools. We had a lot of high schools, and the competition was terrific. We had great turnouts of people, a good fan base, of course, from the high school. But it was just fun being in Erie and being born and raised in Erie, and being around so many different ethnic groups that I always admired. The players that came from different ethnic groups that I had a chance to play with and play against. And I always thought that there were a lot of great ball players in Erie during my time there, and it was just fun. We had a lot of competition, and we all grew up as young kids playing against each other in the different yards and community centers, and doing all the things that we grew up. A lot of us went to opposite high schools, but, we always played against each other, and a lot of us are still, the ones that are alive, we're still good friends today.
Sure.
And so it means a lot to me to be, to be from Erie.
Sure. And you were, not surprisingly, a very good athlete. You're all city in both basketball and baseball. You're a champion high jumper, obviously, very good football player. Was it always clear that football was going to be, kind of the sport you wanted to pursue in college, or were you looking at other sports also?
No, I always liked football. That's what I always wanted to play. That interested me the most. At that period of time, everybody, when you went to high school, that period of time, you played all the sports, because not only the limited number of people in school, but that's just what everybody did at that period of time. Like me, I loved football. My brother Bobby, even though he played with me, was more of a baseball player than a football player, even though he went to the University of Miami, on a football scholarship. He ended up playing in the Yankee farm system.
Okay.
And my brother Kenny played basketball and football, but he was a very excellent golfer. So golf was kind of his sport. Bobby was kind of baseball mostly, and I was football.
Got it. Erie is one of those interesting cities. You're about 100 miles from Cleveland, about 120 from Pittsburgh, and about 90 from Buffalo. Was there
Yeah.
was there like a team that you gravitated towards? Were you like a Browns fan or Steelers fan? What was your kind of rooting interest?
No, I was a Philadelphia Eagles fan with Tommy McDonald, because Tommy McDonald was kind of my hero when I was growing up. So I always had a lot of admiration for him,
Huh.
as a player, and his toughness and the way he played the game of football. And that's why I went and wore number 25, was because of Tommy McDonald when I went to college, and and with the Raiders.
Okay. Oh, that's great. That's cool. And then picking Florida State, how did that come about? I mean, were you looking at, a Pitt or a Penn State or a Syracuse or anybody like that, or did you want to go south?
No, our coaches, Ray Dombrowski and Al Calabrese, knew the Ken Myers, who was born and raised by part of his family in Erie, Pennsylvania. So both the coaches, Ray and Al, knew Ken, and so that's how. And Ken at that time was the offensive coordinator at Florida State, and he happened to be up my senior year up in the Erie area, so he came and watched us work out and everything, and that's how I eventually got down to Florida State, was because of Ken Myers.
Okay, and you get to Florida State. Bill Peterson's the coach. Pretty interesting staff. On the staff, Bobby Bowden is a young wide receivers coach at the time. Don James, who would win a national title at Washington, is the defensive coordinator. It's a hell of a staff they had down there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. John Cota, who eventually went to Wisconsin, was on the staff. Oh, Jesus, there was, God, I can't remember the names. Vince Gibson, who ended up down at Tulane, and there were a few other coaches that went to head coaches at major colleges, after they left Florida State. So Bill had a great staff, very creative staff. Not only with John Cota and Bobby and on offense, and Don on defense. We were a pretty solid team that had a lot of experience. Guys that knew what they were doing coaching and are very excellent at what they did and very excellent at teaching. So It worked out really well. And Bill had a good connection with Sid Gilman down at San Diego, with the Chargers, and spent a lot of time. And that's how we kind of mirrored our offense according to what the Chargers were doing. So that's how we kind of got fed that type of offense, and we had a quarterback like Steve Tensley from Ohio. That was an excellent quarterback, and so it fit right into what we were doing.
Yeah, and you're at Florida State each year. You guys are, the first couple of years, you're basically like a 500 team. You're playing both receiver and defensive back. You set a school record with a 99-yard interception return that has only been broken by Deion Sanders since then. And then your senior year, you really break out and you lead the nation in receiving yards and touchdowns. And I think you're like second in catches. And I wanted to ask about a couple of games that year. You guys, Florida State beats Florida for the first time ever that season. You catch a touchdown. And I think Spurrier, who would go on to win the Heisman, is a sophomore starting for them. You beat Miami 14-0. Your brother's the quarterback. And you beat Oklahoma in the Gator Bowl. You actually kill Oklahoma, speaking of Tommy McDonald, in the Gator Bowl, and you have 13 catches for 194 yards and 4 touchdowns. If you could just give me a comment or two on those games, the Florida, the Miami, and the Oklahoma.
Well, they were all rivalry games, especially, within the state. At that time, there was our school, Florida State, Miami, and Florida were the major schools.
Yep.
And that was such a interstate rivalry every year. And, our big rivalry obviously was Florida, playing them all the time. And that was a big battle that, if you kind of won that game, you had part of the celebration of being one of the best teams in the state. Then if you beat Miami also, then, you had control of the state as far as at least for a year, with something to work from. Right. As far as being the team that was the big college team in the state of Florida.
Yeah,
but the games we played, like Florida, we beat Florida in Tallahassee. Steve was a quarterback, Spurrier, and then playing against my brother down in Miami, those were our two big games, and that was sort of like, supposedly just for PR, if you won those two games, you had a successful season. Well, that's all well and good, but you still got a bunch of other games to play. But, we're happy with the year we had that year. It was a great year. It was the first year Florida State beat Florida ever. Then going down to the Orange Bowl and playing against Miami and beating Miami down there in the Orange Bowl was a great amount of success for us and a great accomplishment.
Yeah. And did I read correctly? Al Davis was at the Gator Bowl and signed you kind of immediately in the aftermath?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's real true. Yeah, you had the opportunity at that time because, it was still the AFL versus the NFL. It was like the young league versus the old league. And you had your opportunity to go to either league. So you had a choice. And, I always wanted to go to Oakland because of the fact that, it was a passing league. Mm-hmm. And I felt that at that time I would fit better going to Oakland than I would going up to Detroit. And, I didn't take the chance. I took an opportunity to go down to the University of Florida. I mean, Florida State, not University, excuse me, down to Florida State from Tallahassee. And I figured, I'm able to make one more trip and go out to California. And so I made my mind. So right after the game, Al was there and we signed a contract. Before I even got in the locker room, right off the field as soon as the game was over, and I was happy I did it. It was a great. I don't want to say at the time it was a very controversial decision, with my family, but it turned out to be the right decision.
Yeah, exactly. Can't argue with how things turned out.
Yeah, I mean, I had to make a decision, going from Erie down to Tallahassee, Florida, which that was like moving to the moon, and first time ever being away from home and being in a different part of the country, which I love being down there, and I still enjoy myself when I go down there at least once a year, every year, and then going out to California.
Yeah,
and I just felt that. You make decisions, and sometimes those decisions aren't the greatest decisions that you could possibly make. But it turned out for me, and I was very happy with the way they turned out.
Yeah,
I have no complaints.
And you step into a Raiders team. Al Davis is the coach, and your quarterback is, recent Hall of Fame inductee Tom Flores, who would go on to coach the Raiders to 2 Super Bowl championships. He's your quarterback. You've got Jim Otto, a Miami, Florida guy, legendary 00 at center. And early on, you're a special teams guy. Al gives you a shot about halfway through the season, and you end up with like 7 catches for 120 yards and a touchdown. And all of a sudden, you're his, one of his starting wide receivers. What was the transition to the pros?
Only if you did your job. It was an experience having Al as your head coach because, that's one thing you learned about is all the phrases that he uses: commitment to excellence, just win, baby. That's what you learned. You learned to be dedicated. You learned to be have a great work ethic. You learned to know that, once you were out there on the field, you were committed to being a ball player. You're being committed to be a Raider, and that's what you learned quickly with Al. And it was a great experience because it was a great, good learning experience, but a tough learning experience because he expected everybody to really be outstanding, how to learn to work, how to learn to want to be a great player. Mm-hmm. And in Al's mind, greatness was the best thing that you could talk about. It wasn't just being good or fair or whatever it may be. You always talked about greatness, and that's what you strive for all the time with Al. Sure. If you didn't strive for being great, then you were just another guy.
Right. And it's an interesting time in the AFL because you're obviously the AFL would exist for 10 years. So this is right in the middle of it. He leaves after 1 year he leaves after that season of being the head coach mm-hmm. to go be the commissioner. And so John Rauch comes in and then Davis comes back like within a year because the AFL NFL merger is hammered out. And, obviously calling for like 3 or 4 years down the road for the leagues to come together. But meanwhile, mm-hmm. it was done somehow behind his back, even though he was commissioner. So he said, well, screw this, and came back to the Raiders, but not to coach, just to be the owner. What was that like as a player? Was it kind of a weird situation?
No, not really.
Okay.
When Al was gone, he just had a decent year. Then when he returned back as part owner, then you saw the coaching side of him as a head coach, and now you saw the other side of him as being an owner, and what he demanded. He demanded a lot, like he did when he was the head coach. From his coaches, from his players, and he was a hands-on owner. There weren't too many practices that he wasn't at. And even when you were in training camp, he was up there, oh my God, probably a good majority of the time. And he was always very, attentive about what was going on the field and what the coaches were doing, what they were teaching the players, what you were doing as far as fundamental periods, what you're trying to accomplish. If you were going forward and growing every day and getting better every day, that you were out there on the field, not only as an individual player, but as a team, that's what he wanted to see, So he was a very hands-on guy with the organization. I mean, he was an owner.
Yeah.
And that's what he demanded. And that's what you tried to deliver.
And I saw on one of those teams, after he came back, Rauch is the head coach. Bill Walsh is the backfield coach. What was it like? Kind of playing for Bill Walsh as an assistant.
Well, Bill was only there for a long period of time.
Okay.
He was there just for a short period of time, but I didn't know Bill at that time very well. Mm-hmm. And it was just a matter of, we had Dick Wood as a receiver coach who played with the Jets for a period of time. Then he brought Flores back. Tom came back and was our receiver coach. And so I didn't know too many of the, guys that were there just briefly,
right.
Right. But the majority of the guys were, at first, after Al left and Roush took over, then it was Dick Wood, and then Tom came.
Okay. And then
yeah.
the 67 season's amazing. You look at, kind of how rosters change. That year, either through draft or trade, Gene Upshaw is added to the roster. Willie Brown is brought in from Denver. George Blanda comes over. John Madden joins as the linebackers coach. And oh, by the way, all four end up in the Hall of Fame. And then, oh, by the way, Daryle Lamonica comes in from Buffalo, and
Mm-hmm.
he is now the starting quarterback. That is like a huge first step towards like, what you guys were starting to become.
Oh yeah, I mean he brought Daryle in because of what Daryle could do on a field.
Right.
As far as throwing the football, and that's what our team was based on, throwing the football, and always on the attack, always wanting to move the ball down the field. We had a great running back, with Clem Daniels there, and a bunch of guys. Then as the years grew, the running backs became, more and more involved in the game. The passing offense went more and more, and it just got to be where we were a pretty good machine out there as far as going after people and beating people. And defensively, when you had guys like Charlie Sumner on a defense and run your defense, and how outstanding that was all the time. It was a pretty good group of coaches, and he got a lot of great players in there, as you well know.
Yeah. And that year you guys break through, you win the AFL championship against Houston. You rout them 40-7 at home. So, kind of delivering for the home fans, a big championship win before going on to play Green Bay in the second Super Bowl. What was it like winning that AFL championship in front of the home crowd?
It was great. I mean, you listen, there is a, great number of years in my 14 years, there was never a better place to play than in Oakland. The people, the crowd, the people prior to the game, after the game, they're just people that were so wrapped up in the team and so dedicated to the team, as far as being there and being loyal to the organization and being one. And they just, they really inserted themselves well as far as being not only part of Oakland or the Bay Area, but part of the Raider organization and part of that stadium. Yeah. Because a lot of people didn't like to come and play in that stadium because of our fans, but our fans loved us and we loved them, and that was the bottom line. And to be able to have and like to win that championship there, it was a great thing for us, because we were starting to get on the move as far as being a dominant team. Yeah.
And you guys go out and you play Green Bay. Now, obviously, this is their fifth title in 7 years, and it's a team. Obviously, it's a very veteran team. It's actually starting to break up a little bit. But what was it like, kind of facing off against them?
Well, I mean, you're playing against legends,
right?
We were a young team. With the group that we had, our team was a very young team, and you're playing against legends that you watched play and that were just outstanding, and with a legendary head coach and legendary players, and that's who you're playing against. They were already legends before we even met them.
Right.
And it was something to be out there on the same field with those guys. And like I said, we were a young team, but we did okay. Did we do great? No, there were some things that we hung in there with them, and we made a few mistakes that they were able to score, and that was a turning point in the game. But other than that, we hung in there with them pretty decent.
Yeah, and most people, when they think of you and the Raiders receiving core, it's you and Cliff Branch and Dave Casper, but you're paired for a couple of years there with Warren Wells, and the two of you are incredibly productive. I mean, Wells is putting up 1,000-yard years, kind of a couple in a row. What was he like as a player? And then also,
Warren was great, but I started off with a guy named Mark Powell,
sure,
who was a great player. And Art was a big guy. He could run. He could catch the ball. He was an excellent player, very intelligent. And then when Warren came in, Warren was, he came in from Detroit, and then I think it was a year with Kansas City, and then we got him, and Warren was a standout right from the beginning. I mean, Warren was a dangerous player. He was very dangerous out there. I mean, he was very impressive. If you wanted to have a receiver come in and do certain things and have an idea of what kind of receiver you would want out on the field to see play, Warren would be your guy.
Right.
Warren would be the guy that if you made a list of 10 things that you wanted to see a receiver do, a receiver play, with all the attributes, physically, speed-wise, quickness, hands, route running, and so on, blocking, and so on, Warren was your guy. Right. Warren was the guy. I mean, he was phenomenal.
Yeah, the complete package.
Yep.
And that's the year, 68 is the Heidi game against the Jets, where the Jets seemingly have the game in hand. We all know that the network goes to the movie Heidi. And then all of a sudden, everything that could go wrong for the Jets did. And you guys end up winning. And I'm guessing you're out on the field. You have no idea what's happening. So you guys start to hear about it after the fact?
Oh, yeah. Well, something that people talk about now, how people blow leads in the second half or whatever it may be. We were a perfect example of a team that with very little time on the clock came back and won a game that nobody ever dreamed that we would win. And they should have made bumper stickers and said, make sure you play full 60 minutes.
Right.
And that's what you have to do. So at that time, it was a great learning experience for all of us, because when you're able to do something like that, then that really boosts everybody up on a team, knowing that no matter what time is on a scoreboard, things could all of a sudden fall right in your lap and you could end up winning a game. So that's, fortunately, that we learned a lot, and that's how we played. I mean, we played in a lot of tough games. We lost a lot of tough games, but we were there to the very end. Yeah. And that was the most important thing that all of us learned at that period of time, that, you're never out of the game.
Yeah. And again, kind of building towards your championship year in 76, that season, you had Kenny Stabler, Art Shell, George Atkinson. And then the next year, after that season, John Rauch leaves for Buffalo, and John Madden is elevated to head coach. He's, I think at the time, I think he was the youngest head coach ever at that point. What was that like in the locker room, having a guy only a few years older than, a lot of the guys in the room? What was it like having him take over?
Well, it was good, because, Al always wanted to like young head coaches.
Right.
And obviously with John, he saw something in John that he felt was going to be good for the team. And then that's, Tom was there. So Tom was a big addition for him. It was a big addition for him, because Tom obviously knew offense so well. Right. And John was a defensive guy. And the defensive staff had a lot of great coaches there. We had a lot of great coaches on offense. So, it was a perfect fit for John to be surrounded by a lot of great coaches too.
Yeah. And about that time, so now you've got Stabler, Blanda's come in, you still have Lamonica. You have to have probably the most talented and, intriguing quarterback room in the league. And right around there, I think it was in 1970, Blanda, who's like 43 or 44 years old, comes off the bench 5 straight games, wins 4 of them, ties the other one. What was it like? I mean, you're the receiver, right? So you're catching passes from Lamonica, but Stabler's the young guy. Obviously, Blanda's the old guy. What was that? What were those dynamics like?
Well, playing with George, coming from Houston, well, with the Bears at the start of his career, and then being with the Oilers, the Houston Oilers, you know, you knew one thing with George. You know, he was going to call a play and let's get the ball, let's throw it down the field. And George was a great inspiration for everybody because of the fact that, you know, he came into those games, you know, winning the games, not only throwing the ball at times, but field goal kicking also. And but George was a veteran guy. He was a tough guy. He was very much of a gambler. He wanted to get the ball down the field. He loved getting the ball to Ward, and that was the thing with George. I mean, when George came in a game, you better start defensively. You better start backing up, okay? Right. Because that's exactly what he was going to do. And George was a very, very, very smart quarterback. I mean, he's very good, and had a very good command in a huddle, out on the field, and you know, it's fun when you're winning, but it was just really a pleasure to be able to play with George all those years and see exactly, you know, how a professional worked.
Right, right. And you had a young Ken Stabler coming out of Alabama, the scrambler, the snake. Did you see early on what, you know, he would become, or was he a little raw at first?
No, Kenny was very mature because Kenny had an opportunity to sit for a couple of years and see Daryle, be with George on the sideline, and then see George go in a game and see what George did. So Kenny got a good learning experience. So when it was Kenny's turn to go in there and take over the team, it wasn't a problem. He just fit right in.
Right.
You know, okay. And he knew, you know, from those couple of years of not playing, he knew all the players and being there at practice all the time and, you know, working with the guys and being around the guys. So, you know, the switch over to Kenny, there was no hesitation. You know, it was just that Kenny was very good, had the command of the huddle, and would come out there, and Kenny was a very intelligent player. He knew how to use his personnel, like Daryle knew how to use his personnel. George knew how to use his personnel. Flores, when I was a young kid, when Flores was a quarterback, knew how to use the personnel. So that was the great thing about the Raider organization and Raider teams, where that the quarterback knew how to use the personnel, and he had that option of being able to use personnel during a ball game if he wanted something, change somebody's route in the passing game. He could change somebody if he wanted to. So it was all there laid out for him, and it was up to him to know how to use it.
Right.
And Kenny did an excellent job. They all did an excellent job. Kenny was very, very good at it. Daryle was very, very good at it. George was great. Tom was great. I learned a lot from Tom, playing with Tom, and being with Kenny, you know, and being with Kenny and Daryle and George and all those guys. I mean, it was, you know, you never lost a beat as far as having somebody come in there and taking a snap and calling the plays and moving people around and getting the ball to different people, knowing how to run the ball, knowing how to pass the ball, knowing who to use in different situations. All of them were excellent, you know. And Kenny had that opportunity to do that because of Daryle and because of George, and Kenny just took over the reins and ran with it.
Yeah. And around that same time, you guys draft, I think it's 71, Jack Tatum and Phil Villapiano come in the draft, also Clarence Davis. And I interviewed Phil Villapiano on this show, and he said that he'd be, yeah, exactly. and he would say, like, you know, when you're hitting a guy, you've got a guy, when Tatum came in and hit from behind and, you know, hit him high, he's like, it just sounded different than every other defensive player he ever played with.
Well, listen, Phil was a great player. Believe me, I'll tell you what. Sometimes Phil doesn't get enough credit for how great he played out there on the field. He was a great player, and that secondary, that defense, it was a tough. Let me tell you something. It was a tough group of guys. I mean, and the teams that we played, especially in our division, if you weren't tough defensively, you weren't going to win.
Right.
And guys like Phil, Tate, Atkinson, Willie, all of them, all the guys on that field defensively, Ted, whoever was on that defensive field playing, everybody's a tough guy.
Yeah.
You had when guys in that secondary, those linebackers, the defensive line, when they hit people, they hit people. There was no holding back, and that's the way the defense was. And the defense really, the defense and offense work really good hand in hand because of the fact that we're always on the sideline. I can't remember too many guys. Whatever. If the special teams was on the field, the offense or defense, everybody was always right around the sideline watching.
Right.
And that was a great thing because when you're an offensive player, you don't want to know where you're going to get that ball from the defense, and the defense wants to know how the hell the offense is doing, and then our special teams were always exciting. And so we're a good group of guys that really have a lot of I don't want to say concern, but had a lot of admiration for the guys that were on the field when we were on the sideline, whoever it may be.
Sure.
And that was a great thing. That was a great thing about our teams over the years with the Raiders, is the fact that everybody had a lot of admiration for each other.
Yeah.
On how much talent you had, how you can play. We were a great team on work ethic, being tough, playing when you were hurt, being dedicated, and going out there. And we all had one thing in common: we wanted to win. Right.
Yeah. And as a receiver, whether it was in training camp in August or whether it was, in a weekly practice, I mean, at different times you had to have gone up against those guys. What was that like, playing against, squaring off against Willie Brown or Skip Thomas, or, if you were running an under route, like against Tatum?
We didn't run under routes. That was for the running backs. Okay. we ran routes. Okay. We didn't do all that little league bullshit. Okay. No, if you wanted to catch the ball, you better be able to run some routes up the field, because you weren't getting any short routes done. Every once in a while, you might catch a little hitch or a quick out, but that's about it. But no, it would start every year. It started in training camp, because our training camp was really physical, really hard. Twice a day, you're playing against the same guys. I mean, our practices were built around being physical. Right. Because that's what you were going to be playing. You're going to be playing against physical players, and you had to learn to be tough, and you had to learn how to get beat up and still come back and play. Sure. Like in training camp, in the afternoons, I mean, we were in the mornings. Our training camp would be basically the run game. But the receivers and the quarterbacks and the tight ends at different times would come over to the other field, and all we did was throw the ball, catch the ball, and run routes with the quarterback. Right. And that it was all fundamentals the entire morning, and we'd get together as a whole team maybe one time in the morning, and that would be it. In the afternoon, when you walked on the field, it was nothing but throwing for 2 hours, 2.5 hours. Right. All right. You'd go, you do your one-on-ones with your defensive backs, but you would probably take at least 10, 12 reps in one-on-one and against the defensive backs, okay? Then you would go to your skeleton passing, then your red zone passing, and everything was man-to-man. There was no zones. All right? So that's what the league was. The league was a man-to-man league. And then in the afternoons at the end of practice, you would go down to the 10-yard line going into the end zone, and you could either run a slant or a slant corner. Those are the only two routes you could run. And it was all bump and run. So you had to learn. You went from the 10, you took like 3 or 4, go to the 5, take 3 or 4, and you either had to learn how to get open on the slant route or a slant corner. And you learn to get open, and you learn to get beat up, and you learn to be physical, and you learn to fight, and you learn to be competitive, and you learn to win. You weren't going to win all the time, but you got to learn to win. And the guys that we had were obviously some of the greatest players that ever played the game. So, you weren't playing against, Mickey the Mope. You're playing against guys that could play. And not only that, could play, they were big. You take guys like Skimp Thomas and Nehemiah Wilson, Willie Brown, Tatum, Atkinson, because Tatum and Atkinson, even in our one-on-ones, would have to go out, and Al would make sure that the safeties that we had would always be involved in a one-on-one drills, always be involved in a bump and run down in the red zone. So those guys were working all the time too, to cover. And that's how our safeties learned to cover. And our corners just get there and they just beat the shit out of you. That's it, and that's how you learn to play.
Yeah. And, and it's interesting because I think I read you were about a 4.7 40. Is that about right?
I don't even know.
Yeah. And but whatever, let's just say it was a 4.7 40. That's basically, kind of what Jerry Rice was. And I remember reading his college coach at Mississippi Valley State, Archie Cooley, said, yeah, I don't care though, because that doesn't I want football speed, because, the reality is he's faster when there's a guy chasing him as opposed to running on a track with nobody around. And I was thinking and I was thinking about you because, going back to when you're in high school, you're a high jump champ. And, you watch clips of yours, you might not be the fastest guy on the field, but your ability to go up and get the ball, from that era, everybody talks about Lynn Swann, your ability to go up and get the ball, in traffic or, just a ball that's high was unbelievable. And it probably owes to that, right?
Oh, absolutely. Well, you know what it is? It's how much. It all depends on who wants the ball most.
Right. Yeah.
That's the whole thing. It's guys go up and catch balls, and they just go up there and they catch them. But then you can see when somebody goes up to catch a ball against somebody else, and you're competing for that ball, you can tell a difference.
Yeah.
And that was the difference on who wanted it the most.
Yeah.
And that's what you had to work towards.
Yeah.
That's it. That was the competitive in everybody, and that's what Al liked. Al liked guys that like to compete, like to fight, and hated to lose.
Yeah.
And not just lose, they hated to lose.
Right.
And so that's what our team was. That's what all our players were. That's what you had to become to be able to play.
Yeah. And I heard so around these times, obviously the team is known for being having a lot of characters and being a lot of fun to hang out with. I remember Phil telling me that after practices, I don't know if it was a Ramada or some kind of bar near the stadium, Matuzak and Sistrunk and him and Hendricks and a bunch of guys would end up in there, kind of after practice, all hanging out. And then you apparently had a bar and guys would go hang out there. Tell me a little bit about that stuff.
Well, the good thing about it is we when we were in training camp so long,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, long, not like they do now. It's like I don't even know why they go to training camp, believe me. But when we went to training camp then, you were going to be around guys for at least 2 full months.
Right.
and you were going to be working twice a day, probably 90% of the time against each other.
Right.
And so we were able to have a good camaraderie with all the guys. When we did get a night off, or let's not do a meeting tonight, give the guys instead of a meeting, let the guys just go do what they want to do. We had a lot of things to do. Like Phil was great in getting things started, like air hockey tournament, bowling tournaments, pool tournaments. Just so all the guys got together and did something together. Go drink beer or go over to the Bamboo Room up in training camp or a couple other places and just be together. And we went and we always carried that over to the season, where we made it like we would have at least one night, a Thursday night, during the season that we all got together, went downtown Oakland, go eat dinner somewhere and go have a pool tournament or a hockey tournament, or, just get together. And we always carried that over for at least that one day a week, all the time. And then the other days of the week, always stop, around someplace around the facility to go have a beer, relax for a little bit, get together, hang out for a couple hours before you went home. And that's what we did. And
Sure.
That's why we're such a close knit group of guys. And that's why we always were able to be a bunch of guys where, no matter what the situation, everybody had a great sense of humor.
Right.
And that was a good thing about our team, that, everybody had, be able to tease guys, kid around with guys and have that camaraderie and that closeness, for a ton of years.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was, kind of in that time when you guys draft Cliff Branch, who obviously can fly.
Mm-hmm.
And about a year or two later, Dave Casper comes out. This is a guy who spent most of his time at Notre Dame as a tackle, and he comes in as a tight end. And so now you're the receiving core, and, obviously making deep playoff runs every year. What was it like when Cliff Branch came on board? How did you guys kind of complement each other?
Well, Cliff could run by anybody. It was fun watching guys trying to get their back up and turn and run with Cliff. But no, Cliff was the speed guy that could run by anybody. It took him about a year to understand what it was like to be a receiver. Mm-hmm. To be able to catch the ball consistently, especially obviously catching deep balls, which, when you can run that fast, you got to be able to make adjustments. He learned how to do that. Yep. And learned how to run routes. And he learned that, you could use that speed to do everything else you wanted to do as far as running all the other routes. Yeah. That the speed wasn't only there for one reason. The speed was there for a weapon to help you run the other routes that you needed to run also, other than going deep all the time. And Cliff learned how to do that. He learned how to catch the football, and he became a threat. Yeah. He became like I talked about Warren being dangerous. Cliff learned how to be dangerous out there on the field too. And Cliff learned how to be tough because, Cliff wasn't a very, very big guy. And he learned a lot from Willie Brown, getting up on top of him in the line of scrimmage in camp and beating him up a few times. Mm-hmm. And he learned how to be tough. He learned how to beat bump and run coverage. And he just learned how to be a complete receiver. It was great to see what he did and how he grew and how he ended up being the great guy, great receiver that he was. Yeah. Yeah. It has to be, between the three of you, as you're going into that Super Bowl season, has to be the most formidable receiving trio. With Dave, I'll tell you what, Dave was phenomenal. Yeah. We had Raymond Chester, and Raymond Chester could run and do a lot of things. And then Dave came in, and Dave was he went to Notre Dame, so he's intelligent. Okay. But Dave was a very intelligent player, a very good player, and he could catch the football and run routes, and he was very smart.
Right.
Very quiet guy, but he has a great sense of humor. You have to drag it out of him every now and then, but he does have that dry sense of humor.
Right.
But Dave's a terrific guy. Dave was a great player. I mean, there were games. I'll tell you what. The other thing is, you go back to like our Super Bowl against Minnesota,
Mm-hmm.
and I get to be MVP, but you go back and watch that game, you wonder why he wasn't the MVP, because Dave had a hell of a game.
Sure.
He really played really excellent in that game, and but that's how he played all the time. And the thing with all of us and Dave, and just talking about Dave now, I mean, if you want to have somebody make a play at a crucial time, as a tight end, Dave could do that. I mean,
right.
that was the biggest asset. He could make a play at the right time and make the tough play, which that's what. Listen, the only reason guys played with the Raiders is that if you couldn't make the big play, you weren't going to play. If you couldn't make that big play, then you weren't going to play. Right. And fortunately, we had guys that could, and Dave was one of the ones that was very excellent at it.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
As evidenced by, you don't see a lot of tight ends flying down the field that goes to the post game against Baltimore, where he's catching that ball all the way downfield, where he's adjusting back and forth.
Oh, dude,
it's unbelievable.
You go back and you look at some of the film on some of Dave's catches downfield and some of the adjustments he had to make. It was phenomenal.
Yeah.
It was really phenomenal. I mean, you go down there and go, holy Christ almighty, what a hell of an adjustment he made there, man. What a catch.
Yeah.
You see these guys nowadays, I mean, there's a lot of great tight ends, but you know what? The one thing I never see is I don't see any of them making those kind of adjustments that Dave made.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't see that at all. I mean, Dave made some outstanding, phenomenal adjustments to catch the football downfield.
Yeah. And speaking of an adjustment to catch a pass, I have to ask the question. I mentioned at the outset that you were in 5 of the 30 most iconic games of all time. You won 4 of them. You lost 1. That was the Immaculate Reception. Obviously, just had the 50th anniversary. I talked to Phil about it because he was obviously on the field. You guys were over on the sidelines. What was going through your mind when it was happening? Was it like, what the hell am I watching? Or tell me about that moment.
Hell, we were halfway in the locker room.
Right.
Forget about watching. We're waiting for the clock to run out so we get our ass to the locker room and get out of the cold. and then the disaster happened. But that's something. That's what happens. That's when people say shit happens. There you go. Believe it.
Yeah.
And it happens. And he just didn't finish the game.
Yeah.
That simple, and if it was complete or incomplete, it is what it is, and that's, I always looked at it, that's just part of life too. You lose games and, you could always look back and say, well, if this happened or if that happened or this, or we got the call, this, that, yeah. It's all well and good. And, at the time you're all pissed off and everything and screaming and hollering and complaining, but, you lost.
Right.
That's it. That's the bottom line. No matter what you want to do, you're not going to change anything. And you just go forward. You just keep going on, which fortunately we were that good of a team to overcome a lot of things that we did lose a lot of championship games on, to be able to come back the following year and compete again and be right there in the mix again. That was the great thing about our teams. We had that mentality, and we had that desire we had that desire to keep winning and to keep battling and to keep fighting, and we did it every year.
Yeah. And speaking of that, yeah, you guys had this crazy run where there was like 4 straight years where whoever you lost to in the playoffs, that team went on to win the title that year.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
you just knew it was a matter of time where you were going to break through. I found the Sea of Hands game against Miami. The Dolphins have won. They've gone to 3 straight Super Bowls. They've won 2. You guys are hosting them in the playoffs. And you've got the Sea of Hands game where Clarence Davis catches that ball in the midst of like 4 Dolphins. What was when you saw that ball, kind of fluttering forward out of Stabler's hands, what was your thought?
Well, first of all, I was on the other side of the field, so I didn't know who he was throwing it to. But then when all you saw was a bunch of bodies and Clarence comes up with it, and you're happy as hell.
Yeah.
You don't think too much about who he threw the ball to or the guy he threw the ball to or what the guy was doing. That guy Clarence came up with a big catch. He came up with a big play.
Yeah,
and that's who was Clarence. And he reached down the old gut bag and came up with a play to help us win.
Yeah,
and that was it. And that was a great thing about Clarence too. Clarence could make big plays too. He was very great. Clarence was a great player.
Another one of those guys who in that Super Bowl, put up, huge numbers along with you and Casper and, the rest of the crew.
Oh yeah. I mean, then you go down, you have guys like Hubbard, Banaszak, Van Egan, Hewart Dixon when he played with us before he passed away, Clem Daniels. We had a lot of great running backs, and that was the thing about our team. We had a lot of great people playing on it. We were also a very good Monday Night Football team.
Oh yeah. You won like 12 in a row or something, right?
Yeah, we were pretty good. I think maybe we lost like 1 in I don't know how many years, something like that. But we're a pretty good Monday Night Football team too. Even though Cosell didn't like us very much, but he learned to like us. But that was our team.
Yeah.
That was our team. I mean, we liked the limelight. We liked being in tough games. We liked tough situations. We didn't care where we had to go play. If we were home, fine. If we had to go somewhere else to play, that was fine too. We looked at it was a challenge. No matter where we played, it was a challenge.
Right.
If we were at home, of course we had the crowd, which was fantastic in Oakland, and then on a road, even though the crowd was against us, they were still fantastic because they gave us a lot of energy to go out there and be competitive and hate the other team more. but that's who we were.
Yeah.
That's the people we had.
And the Super Bowl championship team in 76, you're the MVP. You have 4 catches for like 79 yards. The significance of your catches is every single one of them got you within the 2-yard line. And then in almost every instance on the next play, you punched it in. The 3 offensive touchdowns were all set up by your catches. What was that like in the locker room afterwards? There was a great quote from Kenny Stabler talking about you saying, we've worked together so much over the years. He knows exactly where the ball is going to be before I've thrown it. And I know exactly where he's going to be before I've thrown it. And, that's what makes this work so well.
Well, when let me tell you something. When you spend a lot of time doing those things in practice or in practice against your guys, or in games prior to that game or whatever it may be, those things just get to be normal. Right. They're not anything that you feel like you're being put in a foreign position or a position that you've never been in before. You're used to being in that position. Right. And that was the great thing about playing with Kenny is because you spend so much time together on a field, running routes, during the season, training camp, times in the off season, after practice, all those things that, those things just get to be part of you.
Yeah.
So you never feel like, how I got to run that route for this now. I never did that before, or whatever. That's not even an issue. It's just that you're just in a comfortable position to run whatever route you're supposed to run. You've already done it before, so it's just part of you. And having that connection with Kenny, and with Kenny, like with everybody on the team, with Dave, with Cliff, with the running backs, with the offensive line, the connection was always there. Everybody was always comfortable in what we were doing, what we were calling, and then it's up to people to, just contribute, get out there and work, and do everything to help the team win.
Sure. And after the 78 season, Madden retires, and that's your last year also. Were you cut the next year in training camp, or did you decide to hang it up at the end of 78?
No, I got let go in the off season.
Oh, okay. And you took a year off, and then you go up to Montreal and play in the CFL, and you enjoyed that, right?
Oh yeah, well, Joe Scannella, one of our coaches, was the head coach in Montreal.
Right, he was like the special teams coach for the Raiders.
Pardon me?
He was the special teams coach for the Raiders?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, one time he was a running back coach and a special teams coach, and then he got the head job up in Montreal. And so that year I took off right after that year, end of 78. Well, it would be like the start of 79 off season when I got my notice. And then just before the 80, well, I didn't even start because by the end of the year, right after the first of the year, Joe gave me a call, and he had a player that got hurt, or when they were going to be going to be out for the season, and he needed to replace him with an American because of the rule they have up in Canada, the import rule.
Sure.
And so he asked me if I wanted to come up and play, and I said, yeah, sure, I'll come up and play, And so I went up there and played in 1980. And, I mean, we had a good team. We lost in the championship game to get to the Grey Cup. And but the great thing about it is those guys on the Montreal team were just like the guys I left in Oakland. almost like the mirror of all the guys. They were all veterans. They had been in Grey Cups. They won Grey Cups. They're all tough guys. They were a good group, a good camaraderie group. They all got along well. They accepted me coming from the States, and they all had great work ethics, and they just wanted to win. And believe me, it was just, if I had to say, okay, which group, the guys with the Alouettes or the guys in Raiders, I said they're like similar groups. Right. They probably would have got along pretty well together, everybody, if they were together. Yeah. If we had a big party, it would be that they would understand each other, because it was fun being with those guys in Montreal. I really enjoyed it. Yeah. And like I said, it was, I felt very comfortable there because of the way the guys treated me, the way they were. It was fun being around them, and we won some games, and we had an opportunity. Yeah. Yeah. And you enjoyed it so much. So you got into coaching, and you ended up coaching. It's actually kind of interesting. You coached in the USFL for another old assistant coach, Charlie Sumner, where you got to coach Anthony Carter. Then you coached in the CFL, and then you coached the Raiders,
for like 16 or 17 years under a bunch of head coaches, like 8 or 9 head coaches. And you got to coach guys like Tim Brown, Jerry Rice, Willie Gault, James Lofton. What was it like being on the other side, being the guy with the whistle around his neck?
Well, you know what, I had, you know what, I never wanted to get into coaching because I didn't ever wanted to coach somebody like me. That's the first thing. All right. But I got into coaching when I lived down in the Escondido area, California. A guy named Paul Moyner was the head coach at Orange Glen High School. Asked me, I ran into him one time. We played we played together in the recreation basketball league. And he asked me if I wanted to come down and coach wide receivers for him at the high school. So I said, yeah, okay, fine. So I did that for 2 years with him. Then I went up to the Bay Area, okay, coached at junior college for a couple years. And then I helped Cap out, Joe Cap, for not a year, but like the summer and spring football, and it helped a little bit during the fall with Joe Cap.
At Berkeley?
At Berkeley, yeah. And Ed Hall was out at the junior college out in Walnut Creek and Diablo Valley Junior College. And then I went to the USFL, got the job at the USFL with Charlie. With Charlie. And then I coached for down in Arizona with Frank Cush, Coach Cush, in the last year of the USFL. And then the guy that I coached with the Invaders, Larry Kahara, got the job in up in Calgary. So I went up to Calgary and coached up there. And then left there and came back and then got the job with the Raiders.
Okay.
But I liked it because you know what, I got to spend coaching on basically on all the different levels of football.
Yeah.
You know, and I liked it. I had fun. I don't know how great of a coach I was, but I was a demanding guy.
Right.
But I had some good players in the high school and junior college, up in Canada, in the USFL with Larry and oh Jesus, I'm trying to think of the other guy. Fred Bassana was one of our quarterbacks. Bobby Hebert was our quarterback. Derek Holloway was one of our receivers. Gordy Banks was another one of our receivers, with Anthony. And then up in Canada, I had a good group up there. And then going to the Raiders, you know, with the group I had there over the years, were phenomenal guys, phenomenal players. You know, it's you know what, even when you're right in the mix of everything when you're coaching, you know, you're around, you know, outstanding players. But, you know, it's the same thing I felt when I retired from football, got cut from football. You look back on your career, and even the guys I played with the Raiders, the guys I played up in Montreal, I played with some great players.
Yeah.
And then I was able to be around, coaching-wise, a lot of great receivers. And so I was very fortunate to have that. And yeah, I like coaching, but you know what? It's you know, you're away from home. Right. You know, it's like, you know, the off seasons. You know, you go after the season, you get a little time off. You're starting right off with the combine, and you're getting ready for the combine and the draft, and then you have your mini camps, and then you have your little break for about 6 weeks, which is pretty tough when you're working for Al, because you still had to be on call in case he wanted to bring guys in to work them out. And then when he came back, you went right to training camp, and that was it for the rest of the year. And so you get maybe, depending on how your year ends up, team-wise, if you get in the playoffs, then if you go into 1 or 2 games into the playoffs, then that time to get ready for the combine and know guys and get ready for the draft and doing all that, you're already behind.
Right.
And so it's pretty much all except for maybe a month, say 6 weeks out of the year is the only time you could ever get away from football.
Right.
The off season, I don't know how it is now with Coach Lofty, but our off season, we were in the office every week till Friday afternoon at least, and had Saturday and Sunday off, and right back in Monday for the whole off season. So we weren't really away from football at all, except for 2 days a week in the off season and that vacation period.
Right.
And other than that, so coaching's a tough business, and it's great. Like I say, it's like everything, it's great when you're winning, and it's not very good when you're losing. And, you keep, even like the other day, I listened to a couple guys after the Super Bowl. Well, and even at the playoff games, you win a lot, you lost, but we learned a lot. No, you don't learn. You start losing, you learn to lose. That's all you do. It's like when you start losing, things go south real quick.
Right.
And I don't know what you learn. I think maybe individual guys learn when you lose on the mistakes they made, and how they should have done this, how they should have done that. But I guess there's something to learn from it, but I've never seen it. I've never learned from losing.
You don't want to get too good.
What the hell do I want to learn from losing other than getting the hell away from it and getting off the field or coaching, don't even want to show up the next day, so that's why I've always hated losing. There's not, for me, there's nothing to gain from losing. The only thing when we had lost some games, when I was playing especially, you couldn't wait to get back and get out there and start to getting ready for the next game.
Right. Get that taste out of your mouth.
Yeah. Now, whatever, they always hug and kiss each other after the game and all that stuff, I would say, F and see you later. Go in the locker room, win or lose. Why the hell do I want to go shake hands with somebody over there that's trying to beat me or we just beat? Screw you.
Guys smiling too much.
Yeah. Hey, listen, you go on the field, I'll tell you what, when guys, the one thing I hated, let's have fun. Hey, let me tell you something. Show me a guy that's going out there just to have fun. I'll show you a guy who's getting his ass kicked. You're going out there to win. You're not going out there to have fun. If that's what the game is to you, then you got a long way to go. Yeah, so it's fun when you're winning. Yeah, you could say it's fun after the game. Oh, this was fun. Yeah, don't say we're going out there to have fun. No, you're going out there to kick somebody's ass and win. That's the bottom line. Listen, when you're in sports, I don't care what sport you're in, there's only one bottom line. That's winning.
Right.
That's it. If you go out there with a mentality of coming second, or that you lost and that's okay, or you came in second and that's fine with you, you're making strides. Well, you're full of shit. That never went very well over with me.
Right.
It's just, if you're a competitor, you're not smiling at anybody. That's it. You're out there to do one thing, that's to win. I don't want to shake anybody's hand. I don't want to say hello. I don't want to say goodbye. I want to get out there, win the game, get the hell in the locker room, get dressed, and get the hell out of the locker room. That's all.
Yeah. It's funny. I interviewed Randy White, and he said he loved going to the Pro Bowl because it was, Hawaii, but he hated going to the Pro Bowl because then all of a sudden you got to meet the other guys. You realize that they're probably nice guys. You meet their wives. He's like, I don't want to know this. I want to go out and, take that guy's head off. I don't want to get to know these guys and have to smile and shake their hands when I play them.
I was fortunate enough to be able to play in a few Pro Bowls. And you know what? To me, I would rather see the Pro Bowls then like they are now. Okay, where they do the senior citizen drills and all that stuff. Okay, everybody loves that. Okay, play catch with the balloon and all. Pat each other on the ass and have a good time. Go out there and run around, get your big paycheck, and get the hell out of there. The Pro Bowls we used to play, these guys that get their ass kicked.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, Pro Bowls, I never liked them, because to me, it was always once the season's over, it's over.
Right.
That's it. You just shut it down. And then 2 weeks later, you're going and practicing for the Pro Bowl, all that stuff. I never liked that. I never did very well in Pro Bowls anyway. So, but my heart was never in it to even be there. My biggest Pro Bowl thing was we were down in L.A. and Madden was the coach, and I was a replacement for one of the guys that couldn't make it or got hurt or something like that. So I was close in Oakland. He asked me if I wanted to come down. Yeah, I'll come down. So we're getting introduced after. That's when, before the game, that's when you used to line up. They introduce everybody. They let those pigeons go. One of the pigeons shit right on my shoulder pads. That's my, and I cracked my wrist in the game. So Pro Bowls are not my favorite.
Yeah,
no,
that's funny.
Not at all. No,
well,
hell no.
I have to ask you two questions before, because I've taken up a ton of your time. First of all, toughest D-backs not wearing silver and black that you went up against, and then also, when were you first introduced to the Stickum? Have to ask those two questions.
Oh, Jesus. Oh. Well, it's 49ers had Jimmy Johnson.
Right.
Who was excellent. And Kansas City, oh, boy. Oh.
Emmett Thomas?
Emmett, and then, my God, the kid I played against most of the time. Jesus. And I was just going through my stuff the other day, too, and I saw
Jim Marsalis?
Yeah, Jimmy Marsalis. There you go. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, Jimmy Marsalis. Yeah, because playing against Jimmy Johnson, because Herb Adderley, I still have a nightmare with that from the Super Bowl.
Sure.
Okay, picked it off and ran it all the way in for a touchdown. Okay, but Herb was excellent Hall of Famer, all that. Jimmy Johnson was excellent.
Yeah.
All right, Jimmy Marsalis was excellent. But the thing with Jimmy Marsalis, when you saw Jimmy Marsalis, if you watch fights and you see boxing and you see a guy like, say, the 145-pound, 150-pound guy, the fighter, that you're in for a fight, that's what Jimmy Marsalis looked like. Okay, Jimmy Marsalis was quick, tough, battle. We went after each other pretty good. I liked playing against him, and it was a battle.
Yeah,
it was a challenge, And we played against each other long and a lot of years.
Yeah,
and it was fun. I'm glad you remember his name. But Jimmy, yeah, absolutely him. Jimmy Johnson, Herb. Something in that period of time that I played, you know what? You could go down on every team, and you know what? You look at that era that I played in, that period of time that I played in. Christ, there's more Hall of Fame guys in that era. It's unbelievable. You go from like go from like 67, 66, 67, all the way to, say, 77, 78.
Mm-hmm.
Pay some money. There's more Hall of Fame guys in that period of time that I played against. Is amazing.
Yeah.
No, you know, and I mean, it was amazing. I mean, I don't know if there's that. I don't think there'll ever be an say a 10-year period of time. Say you go from 67, say 66, 67 to 77. Mm-hmm. I don't think you're ever going to have that many Hall of Fame guys playing professional football in that period of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
it was a golden era.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're all listen. You know, I mean, in that you take a period of time, you take any team in that period of time. A lot of majority of AFL teams, they're all Hall of Fame. People remember them to this day.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, I mean,
legends.
you're talking close to 50 years ago, and guys still remember all those players from that period of time. So it had to have some type of impact on professional football.
Absolutely.
You know, yeah, it was not too many. You know, I don't know how many people look at it that way. That's how I look at it. You know, you look at it. You had to, you had great games. My God, you know, phenomenal games. You had phenomenal players. You had legendary players. You know, legendary players that people still want to see be around. A lot of guys have passed away, but that's what that era produced.
Right.
You know, it was a phenomenal era, and to be able to play in that era, I mean, and you know, I mean, this is talking for everybody. I mean, you got to be pretty damn good to play in that era. You know, I don't care who you were. You know, if you're going to be successful in that era, you got to be pretty goddamn good, man. I'll tell you that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
then what? To stick them.
Yeah.
To stick them. You know what? Jesus, Speedy Duncan.
Sure.
Well, I think Speedy might have played for Washington for a period of time. Then was, I think, I'm not sure, and he was a returner, defensive back, a corner.
Sure.
And then he was with the Chargers.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
Dick Romanski, who was our equipment manager. I forget the guy that was equipment manager for the Chargers at that time. He was there for I don't know how many years, probably about 60. Okay. But anyway, they're all close. So Speedy was using the stuff, and Dick saw it, and he went over to the equipment guy. Said, "What's he using?" He said, "Oh, well, we got this stickum. We got this paste stuff." And he said, "Let me see it." So that's how we ended up getting it from there. And there was a small company in San Diego that made it.
Oh.
You know, and so that's how we got it. And it was because we saw Speedy Duncan using it. You know, and so that's how the story. That's how it started, and that's basically where it came from. And then I don't know, if just because of our reputation with the Raiders, when we started using it, it got I don't want to say blown out of proportion, but probably not. But we always said, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. And but I will say this. I would rather have those sticky gloves that those guys use today than to stick them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny you say that. I interviewed Steve Largent, and he said the same thing. He said, "Man, what I would do to have those gloves that these guys have today." Oh,
hell yeah! Absolutely. I mean, with the stick 'em, you go back and you're playing in the cold and the snow, like back east or up in Denver, Kansas City. That stuff hardens.
Right.
It gets hard, and you have no gloves.
Right.
And but those gloves they have now are phenomenal. I'll tell you what. Yeah, I wish I had that. And yeah, I'm glad at least Steve knew that, because Steve and I are very close and good friends, and I love Steve. He's a very, very close friend of mine, and I think the world of Steve.
Oh, that's
He's
cool.
Phenomenal. I was happy to see him get in that group of 100.
Yeah.
that was named, what, about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago now? Yeah. I was really proud of him for him to be able to get into that group, because it's very well deserved. He was a phenomenal player, and a gentleman and a very good guy.
Yeah, I agree. He was a fun guy to interview. As have you been, and you've been very generous with your time. I'm going to wrap up. I'm going to read you a quote. I just love this from Madden because it just kind of captured everything. John Madden on Fred Biletnikoff. The thing that's most impressive about Fred is that he is a man-made receiver. He's had to work for everything he got. He can catch anything he can touch. That's no accident. Some wide receivers might catch 15 or 20 balls in practice. Fred will catch 100. Kind of sums it up about the work ethic and what he and Al are looking for, right?
I'll tell you what, something there's, you go back and years go by and you think, and, it's sad, John passing away, and you think about people that were part of your life that you got a chance to spend time with. And I had that opportunity with him, and it was a terrific time. It was a great time in my life to be able to be around him. It really was.
That's awesome. Well, Fred Biletnikoff, thank you so much for taking the time to come on Chasing Hardware. I can't tell you how much fun this has been for me.
All right. Well, you take care of yourself, okay?
Sounds good. Thank you, Fred.
All right, mate. Sure.
And thank you for listening to Chasing Hardware. I've been your host, Rich Lamello. The Michael Stanley Band brought us in, and the Suburbs with Life is Like are going to take us out. Speak to you next time.
Tonight, it feels like life. Come on. Life is like. Life is like. Life is like what it